Frieza said to Zarbon and Dodoria that I don't have time for that now, soon I will go to planet Namek and I will wish to become immortal. And Frieza said my father and a lot of other people told me about the Dragon Balls some years ago, and they said these wonderful wishing orbs have the powers to grant any wish like magic, something straight out of a fairy tale, but I believe it and I'm going to find out if it's true or not. And Frieza said a girl like me wants to find her Prince Charming, and everyone else around Frieza said only a handful of people know your secret, my lord, that you're really the daughter of King Cold. Frieza said yes, it's a secret I have kept well hidden in this grotesque male form. And then she transformed into a beautiful curvy woman with beautiful white flowing hair. This is my true form, and every man in the room yearned for her. And she said back to work everyone, and meanwhile back on Earth I was training and getting ready, and I even perfected my ki blasts and ki swords. I had now mastered my ki energy to god levels, and I got stronger along with my brother Raditz, but little did I know it was about to get very complicated between me and Frieza. And when the time came I wished for Shenlong to grant me the Kai Kai technique, and he granted my wish, and I teleported right in front of Vegeta and Nappa and me, and Raditz told them everything, and I even trained Vegeta in my gravity chamber to master the first Super Saiyan form. And then before I knew it I was standing in front of Frieza, and I smelled something strange, and he was saying I'm going to have to show you your place, Saiyan. And I said wait, I know something, you need to go with me somewhere else in private, we need to talk because I know your secret, Frieza. And then me and Frieza went somewhere to talk in private, and she asked how do you know my secret, and I said because I can smell you, I can smell your hormones and everything, it's overwhelming me. And then she transformed and showed me her true female form, and we were now standing in a cave in private, and I saw the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life, and I was staring at her, and she said what, Saiyan? And I said you're gorgeous, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And then she started talking and she blushed and said thank you for the compliment, such a nice gentleman you are. And then I ran up and kissed her, and she said what the hell, and I couldn't stop doing it, and I said I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself for some reason, I don't know what's wrong with me. And then she started kissing me back, and before I knew it I was making love to the beautiful female Frieza, and I was doing her in every sexual position, and we didn't want to stop having sex. And I said oh my god, I love this so much, what's happening to us? And she said shut up and just keep screwing me. And she said oh my god, this feels so good, I love it. And I said me too, and we both said oh my goodness, and then we both had orgasm many times. And she woke up and said so Saiyans have sex like this, it's wonderful. And I said don't your kind make love like this? And she said we can reproduce asexually or sexually. And I said interesting, I kinda like that idea and concept. And she said you're an interesting Saiyan. And I said any chance you could spare the Saiyans please ma'am, and please don't kill any more innocent people that don't deserve to die. And she said I might consider it after you give me oral pleasure and you continued to have sex with me for as long as I'm alive. And I said well how long does your kind live? And she said for thousands of years. And I said impressive. And I said ordinary Saiyans can live for hundreds of years, but I'm no ordinary Saiyan, the stronger a Saiyan is the longer they can live. And I said I am the strongest Saiyan in existence, even among my race I'm an anomaly. And she said well that's one thing you and I have in common. And she said I'm pregnant, I can feel it, and now I will have to have your children and marry you. And I said oh my god, I'm sorry, I'm already married. And Frieza said that's fine, she will have to be made aware and she can join us in ruling our empire together and enjoy a lifetime of comfort, but if she disagrees with our union then she will have to be killed on the spot. And I said please don't do that, I'll talk to her, and I'm going to politely ask you ma'am to please don't kill any more innocent people please. And she said okay fine, I'll only kill the ones that really annoys me. And I said yay thanks. And she said pleasure me now please. And I said yes ma'am. And I made love to Frieza many times in that cave on Namek, and then she finally went into labor and she had the most powerful children I've ever seen in Dragon Ball Z. And then we walked out with our babies, one in our hands, we both now have 2 babies. And I said Bulma's going to be very angry and probably try to murder me. And I said to Frieza what's up with your hormones, your body? And she said just like any other female we have very strong pheromones.